Oh, they look, oh, top tip bars, those look awesome.
David, if you want, I can
Great.
just suggest the amendment.
Yeah, if you want to do that. Either way, I can.
You see what, it's
785.
785
Yeah.
to consent. Yeah. And you could always make, if you want to cite the reason, that would be fine too.
Get her over
Okay.
here.
What's even an extra big computer today? Is it new? Oh, did you?
Did you check that we're the right people?
Ryan, who you guys playing tonight? Slack.
All right.
Glenwood,
All right, we're going to go ahead
one
and
of
get
their 5
started.
teams.
One of their 5 teams.
1 minute, sir. Hang on.
Okay.
Just about there. I started this hours ago and then I forgot about it. Saw a squirrel somewhere. Yeah. And 3 screens up. Screen over. Great.
With the new computer, it does automatically hook to the
Oh, there you go.
Wi-Fi.
That and then like. Okay.
What's our Wi-Fi password? Do we remember?
It's
Okay.
password.
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome
Noah's
to
ready?
our Mardi Gras edition of the Town Council here in Basalt. I'm filling in for Bill Kane. He's away this week. And just a note on online access, you can go to basalt.net under Agendas and Minutes, and you click on the tab for February 13th, and there's instructions for accessing the meeting online. So you can join the webinar there, so you can check that out. So I'd like to call the meeting to order and do a roll call. So Pam?
Okay, let us begin with Dieter Schindler,
Present.
Angela Anderson,
Here.
David Knight,
Here.
Elise Hoddle,
Present.
and Ryan Slack.
Here.
All right, most of the A-team's here.
Okay, we're going to move along to the consent agenda. There is one modification we want to do to the consent agenda tonight, and that is to add resolution number 7, series of 2024, approving the purchase of decorative bollards for the construction of the Midland Avenue Streetscape project. We want to get this in here now because someone has to coach some basketball. We want to make sure we have a quorum for that later on. Important work. So in addition to that, the regular consent agenda that's published are the minutes from January 23rd, 2024 Charity Classic Beneficiary Selection. Response is who was selected there. And then continue to February 27th, 2024, the continued public hearing and first reading resolution number 38, series of 2023. Resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving a sketch site plan review, sketch environmentally sensitive area, ASA review, sketch reach to floodplain review, sketch plan PUD approval, and associated development review actions for the Jadwin Black Mountain development at 431 Emma Road, Basalt. And then lastly, ratification of appointment, ratify a recommendation to reappoint Carolyn Kane to the Basalt seat of the Basalt Regional Library Board.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
I think we need 2 motions here. One would be, first is to amend the agenda to add resolution number 7, series
Okay.
2024 to the consent agenda, and then a motion to approve, after that's approved, then a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, could I get a motion to add 7A5 to the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there?
Second.
Been moved and seconded? This is voice vote, right?
Yes.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Any opposed? No? Okay. And do I have a motion for the consent agenda from anybody?
Mayor, I move that the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
And moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the call to the public. Remember the rules here, right? 3 minutes, so limit your comments to 3 minutes and address your comments directly to me. Identify yourself by name and address, and be courteous, civil, constructive, and make no decision or take action, but may direct to the town manager. And if there's any public hearings on the agenda for tonight that you want to speak about, save those comments for then, and we'll cover that then. So, anybody have any public comments they'd like to make? Reed?
Thank you, Mayor Knight. I'm Reed Hoey. I live at 104 Midland Spur, and I'm here on behalf of the owners and residents of the 100 building and the 104 building to address the lighting on Midland Spur. Town staff has provided a lot of background on how the decisions were made for the lights that were installed, and I appreciate that and thank them for their cooperation. And I summarized it and put it, I believe it got into your packets. But I wanted to quickly mention tonight that, you know, what we learned with this material was that, there were two major points. One was that the justification of the kind of parking lot type fixtures that were put on Midland Spur were based on zoning, and as commercial zone. And we learned that Midland Spur is only partially commercially zoned. The side that is Lions Park is public zone. And our two buildings are in an R4 residential zone. So it's not uniformly commercial zoning. There's significantly, a lot of it is not. The second is that the master plan that was adopted by town council put this area, and the planning commission put this area in conjunction with the historic downtown. But well, I'm trying to figure out how I want to say this exactly. But it was not, and it's not really lumped in with the commercial properties that are on Two Rivers Road. Yet, the planning office said that they were patterning the lights after those that are on Two Rivers Road. So given that zoning is not uniformly commercial, that there's residential zoning in there, and that the master plan and the, that has been adopted by the town council and the Planning and Zoning Commission puts us in with the pattern architecture, if you will, of downtown, we want to insist that these lights be changed to match the historic lights that are going to be on Midland Avenue and are currently on Midland Avenue. I also put in the packet, which I hope you received, that some examples of how the lighting is affecting those of us who live in that building. It's not as shielded as one might hope. It's visible from the fourth floor of these buildings, whereas none of the light is supposed to go beyond the horizontal plane, and the glare from the lights across the street, although the shielding did help with some of it, still goes in the windows of many of our residents. So that's my request of town council. You have all the material, but I wanted to bring it up tonight. And if anybody has any questions, I'll answer them.
I would love if you could take some more pictures at night,
Okay?
just to show, because obviously I'm not at your house, so I can't see how bad the glare and stuff is.
Yeah.
So,
I can ask residents to provide.
especially from the fourth floor, I mean,
Yeah.
I feel your guys is paying, we're trying to get to the bottom of it, but.
Yeah.
Did you see the ones that were included in his letter on? in
I saw the last ones, but I didn't.
Email today?
No, I missed that email. I'll look right now.
Was it today?
Yesterday.
It was
Yesterday?
yeah, this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, yesterday, right?
Well, I sent everything through Pam, and she's very good about sending it along, so I'm certain it's there.
And I just didn't know if Ryan.
I must have missed it, sorry.
Were there photos in there?
Yes.
Yes, there were photos in there.
There was some current, I think there was one.
There was one from the second,
Yeah.
one from the third floor of Midland 104, and then ones from the second, third, and fourth floor of the 100 building.
Ryan, I have a clarification question Regarding the street lighting going the rest of the way down Midland Avenue, is that gonna be swapped out? Will the existing fixtures stay?
Yes, no, they will be swapped out. So there's a new style of fixture that will be going on the Midland, sort of commercial core area. And the design team, sort of the point of what they were doing was aiming to make Midland itself distinct and special. And so I think that was the reason for having sort of the two different styles of lights. Furthermore, the lights that will go up on Midland also it's a style that is going to include irrigation in them so that we can have, flower baskets and things like that. So it's not something that, we don't have that irrigation down over here. I suppose you wouldn't have to hook it up necessarily, but, I think that it's staff's preference or recommendation that we stay with the design that we've installed on here, partly because of the expense, but then also partly with the design team's desire to, make some distinction between Midland and the Midland Spur improvements.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think mainly what I wanted to clarify is just that don't get too attached to the ones that are already existing in historic downtown, because those are gonna change as well. So we don't necessarily know what that's gonna look like yet. At least I don't. I haven't seen those.
What if we move those down here?
Um,
What if we put the historical ones in front of this building?
Well,
I know it's crazy. I'm just asking, talking out loud, trying to appease the people.
Sure.
So they
I
don't
mean,
tar and feather me.
if you want us to look at that, it's something we can look at, but, I don't know if the bases that we have in there would accommodate that, so you might need to replace the bases, like if the bolt patterns aren't the same, and so there's a lot more that goes into it than just a simple swap.
100%, but we should definitely look at it.
So I know when we get the manager report, Ryan's going to make some comments, about the code and what some of the things that you addressed in your letter. Appreciate the letter and all the detail, kind of spelling out in that form as well. Ultimately, we want to get to a solution where, we're mitigating and addressing the outcomes, the negative impacts that you guys are facing in a way that's like a feasible way. So I know staff's going to come up with some options. I'd be curious to see if that would be possible or not, but, try to figure out what we can do, ultimately for an outcome for you guys, so it's not bright and obtrusive and you have that kind of light intrusion. So
Thank
keep
you.
working on it, appreciate your patience.
Well, just as an aside, at the last meeting, you were reviewing the master plan for the Public Works site. That, to me, would be an appropriate place to put these lamps, so they weren't used or wasted. And then we could have more historic lights that are installed that are better fit for what is residential zoning on that street.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to throw away, I forgot how much those were, but they were a lot.
Doesn't matter. They could have been $2. We're not throwing them away.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, no, that's a good points. Appreciate it.
Pictures are after the shields.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Reed.
Not those, Brett. You can see
See
the
the
ones that are
shield.
shielded, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any other public comments?
And I think the optics of the camera
Yeah, pick it
pick
up.
up brighter.
Good evening, Mayor Knight. Good, everybody. I'm Sandy Kaharchek. I live in Building 100. So maybe I just want to reiterate everything that Reed said is so true. There are 4 floors in our building. And I'm on 1 and 2 right here on the corner of it. And I really do appreciate putting the shields in. I mean, that really has made an okay kind of temporary fix, we're hoping, because across the street, the ones across the street are still quite bright. I know you've dimmed them, but even at that, they're still really bright. Like I say, I do appreciate it. You were quick on that. And like Reed was saying, the shields do stop some of it, but if you're at a slant at it, you're not right in front of it, you still see quite a lot of light, and even up above. I just want to say that, I mean, we kind of feel special too, not just downtown. There's a lot of history, the Snell Building, City Hall, Lions Park. I would really encourage you to think about this also being part of downtown, the historic part. Yeah, it's, people walk down from there, they don't stop right at the corner. They keep walking down into Lions Park and then across to the new park. I just think it would be nice to pull it all together and have it all be historic downtown Basalt instead of just that Midland Avenue. Anyway, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. Anyone else? Anyone online? I don't know if anybody online is.
If you're online and would like to make comments to the town council, if you would raise your hand in the Zoom, please.
Okay, I don't see anyone raising their hand. So let's move.
There's one more.
Coming up.
Oh, somebody's coming, okay. Please.
Hi, my name is Lauren Garrity. I live at the Twin Rivers condos at 100 Midland Avenue. You know, I, like everyone else, we appreciate the shields, but they, in my opinion, don't work. And it seems like lately the lights have been completely turned off at night. So there's no lighting right now. I'm not sure if there's a way that we could get, I mean, I don't know how it all works mechanically, but if we could get the lights right in front of us that affect us the most turned off, that would be great. But if there could be some light somewhere until this is resolved, and truthfully, I really only think the only resolution is to replace them. I don't know, it's kind of like putting lipstick on a pig, for lack of a better term, with the shields and the dimming, which I can't tell that they've been dimmed at all. I don't see that. And I think that, we, as a community, especially us living where we do, we've been very accommodating and understanding of the project and in full support. Like, I'm in full support of finishing it all and doing what we have. But these lights have really been a shock, I think, to most of us, just in terms of how you're trying to make everything else look so nice. And then these lights that are completely out of place that look like they're supposed to be at DIA in the parking lot. I think they're a complete eyesore, and I don't get the sense still that there's any talk of replacing them. And I guess that's where I'm getting a little bit frustrated. Like, this is my Reed's obviously done a lot of research and whatever, and I appreciate that because I don't have the time to do that. But as a homeowner who's trying to protect their value of their property, it's a big deal. And it's not just people on our street that have made comments. I've heard from several other residents in Basalt, like, oh my God, I can't believe they put those lights on your street, or when I have people come over, they're like, oh my God, those lights are heinous. It's so blatantly obvious to me that I just don't know how ever they got put up in the beginning. And it sounds like maybe they didn't get fully approved, but, I would just like to, give you my opinion as someone that's, hasn't been up here a lot, but I love Basalt. I moved down here 3 years ago, but I just think they have got to be replaced, period. And hopefully you can use them somewhere else, but for our street, I think that's really the only solution. So, thank you.
Thank you. We got one more.
I don't want to beat the dead horse into the ground too much, but my name's Morris. I also live at 100 Midland. I think everyone's made great points about the lights, and I just want to raise my hand and say I'm also negatively affected. We went from being able to wake up in the morning and have the sun be kind of our internal clock, and now it's just the lights are always on and glowing into the window, and you're not sure if the sun's coming up or if it's middle of the night or what's going on. I'd just like to see some more consideration from the town on how to fix this issue. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What percentage have the lights been dimmed? Do you know?
Yeah, so the lights that are down here in front of the CC's building, Twin Rivers, and then over here, there's sort of two, one outside this building and one here, are dimmed to 5% of their capacity. So
You diminish them by 5%?
no, to 5%, diminish them by 95%. Which, I think with these LED lights that tend to be, pretty bright, I can understand where it may not be immediately noticeable. I think if we turn them back up to 100%, you probably recognize the difference. But yeah, that's how much we've reduced them so far. And I think that's the most we can reduce them. I think the next notch turns them off. So.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? Last call. So we can go move on to.
I'd just like to make one more comment on this. Sure. There was no lights in front of your building before, correct?
Right.
So-
No street lights.
No streetlights, that's, yeah. So, just one worry is, if we put any streetlight back there, you guys might not be happy. Not to, just talking out loud, I want the best for you guys. I'm happy to work on trying to get these replaced. Totally understand. But, because lights create so much light, I'm worried that whatever we do, there's gonna be light outside your building because of this new parking that we've created and the new pedestrian zone we've created. So, just to put that out there so that if we do change the light, it is stated that if there's a light in front of your building, it might not be great. So.
Can I say something?
Well, I didn't want to create a back and forth. Yeah, you're still in public comment.
Hi, I'm Mary Fox, and I live at 104. It has been brought up to us before, you had no lights, now you have lights, you just need to get used to them. And I think there's some truth to that, and I appreciate that. And I understand your concern about it. I think, and I'll speak for myself here, but hopefully others will agree with me, if they were the kind of lights that you would put in a residential or a public area, they'd be lower, they would shine down and not out, and really, to me, it's really important to me, and others have mentioned it as well, that they honor the historic town. Midland Avenue is the focus, Main is the focus, but we're part of that historic district too, and we think the whole town would look better, downtown would look better if they were consistent lights. There are 5 different kinds of lights in like a 4 or 5 block area.
I've seen them all.
And I know, and on Two Rivers, there are 3 just on the, north side. So it seems to continue those lights from Two Rivers up the Midland Spur, which goes into downtown, and then a new light going through downtown. We would love it to all honor the history of the town. And I don't want to say anything about the lights on Two Rivers, because I know you can't change everything, but to make it all consistent is all part of the downtown core and look the same and respect the residents that live there. And I know that you put in parking, but there is always parking down there.
Totally
So,
understand.
but I appreciate your concern. Hopefully, we won't dislike anything.
Yeah, that was kind of my point about
That to be out
the,
there too.
yeah.
So I just wanted that comment to be out
Oh,
there, just so
I
we're
appreciate
all
it, yeah.
on the same page.
Yeah.
And that was my point about the lights on Midland changing as well, is like, I think Ryan and I are saying we just want to set expectations.
We assumed that the lights on Midland, Main were going to change.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought that these lights would be the same on the spur, because it's all part of the old railroad system. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate all the comments. So, any other council comments that you guys have?
I have 2
Okay.
comments concerns that I just want to share with my fellow counselors. One is that some trees got cut down in the park over here, and it really, really upsets me. Maybe it's like I'm the Lorax and I'm speaking for the trees. But to me, that's like somebody coming and graffitiing town hall. Like, it is just completely inappropriate, and I want the community to understand that that's not okay, that we don't condone that behavior, and I would like to see a fine assigned to something like that if there isn't one that already exists, and I would like to see the perpetrator fined for that action, just as we would somebody who, vandalized town hall.
Just so you're aware, we agree, we investigated it, and we don't know who did it. We questioned several people. We took the blades that were found on the ground that were purchased from Walmart, and actually went down to Walmart to try to find, and it turns out they were purchased online, it looks like. We had some suspicion as to why they might have been cut down, but we can't say with any certainty. But it is unfortunate, and we're going to put trees back up. So if somebody did cut them down for a particular purpose, it's not going to do them any good in the long run. So
Appreciate that.
yeah.
Thank
It's
you.
like a risky way to get, I don't know what the point of that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
I agree. Those were three, decent sized trees in a riparian, wetland area. So
In a park,
yeah,
in a park.
yeah,
Just blows my mind.
yeah.
Thank you. The other thing I wanted to bring up is I've had a couple of conversations with folks in the community about ADA access and, I'll just stop with ADA access. And I wanted to say two things, both positive and negative. I'll start with positive, and that is that I think there's been some confusion about not having like dedicated parking spaces for ADA access on the new streetscape, but there's no curbs. So if there's no curbs, then anybody can access it. And that doesn't just mean wheelchairs, but that could be a walker, that could be a stroller, it could be a bicycle. So I just wanted to say that on a positive side, that I think that's a great piece of the design. On the negative side, I have heard that there's been some pushback about aligning the doorways so that those are also easy to enter. And I just want to remind the community and anybody that feels that it's going to change the aesthetic, that we owe it to our population, we owe it to our community to make all of these things accessible. Right now, while we're making these changes, the same reason why we're changing out, 60-year-old water mains and sewer mains, like we've got to come up to the modern age. And the same thing is true with disabilities. Anybody who's differently able should be able to get into a business. They should not have to go to a back door. I mean, can you imagine if somebody was like, I'm sorry, we don't have a way for you to get in the front door, but you can go in the back door. I mean, that feels like the dark ages. And more than 25% of our population is over the age of 65. So we still have a big contingent of folks, and we're all aging. I'm aging. And it's not just the aging folks too. It's like, moms with strollers and that sort of thing. It's like you wouldn't want to turn away somebody who had kids because they had a stroller that they couldn't get up. So I just want to kind of remind our community that like we need to embrace these things, and they're about, making our community feel whole and embracing everybody and being one. So I'll step off my soapbox.
Thanks, please. Anyone else? Any other comments? I don't have any, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Ryan.
Great. A couple of comments. Michelle, did you have anything on the lighting that you wanted to talk about?
I can, yeah. On the lighting, we do have a few more shields, and we have a couple more adjustments that we can make to further try some more additional remedies on the existing lights. So that might be a good next step before we make any other decisions going forward. The photos that we received from Reed were really helpful in understanding how much the shields that we put on are working or not. So we'd like to have that opportunity to work on those as well. So we actually have that scheduled for tomorrow to have additional shields put on both This lamppost out here in front of Town Hall, and then the next one in front of the planning building, which I think have the most immediate light that comes across the street to those units. So if we could try that, since it's already scheduled, we already own those, and then see where we're at, that might give us a next immediate step, so.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, just as far as, what we did with adding what are, sort of commercial standard lighting into the area, the zoning code, which, I think that code section isn't perfect, and it doesn't consider every unique circumstance in town, so you have to make an interpretation and apply it as best you can. And what we have down on the Midland Spur area here is, the CC's building, if you will, at 104 is actually a commercially zoned building. It's zoned C2. This building is a public building, and it is zoned public, and, the zoning code related to the lights does point to, all non-residential uses will use that non-residential lighting standard. And so the Twin Rivers building is a PUD, it is residential, but you have that kind of mixed in with this commercial, these other commercial uses. So as I said, the application may not be an exact fit, but it is, in essence, a mixed use type of zone. And, the code, once again, in that non-commercial lighting standard does, contemplate the mixed use as well. So, I think as we were going through and making those interpretations, the commercial lighting standards were appropriately applied. And, I think the other thing with what we saw in Reed's letter related to the master plan, the master plan is, not a regulatory document. It's not the code. They talk about these different neighborhood typologies, and, he sort of drew from the 2020 master plan that the Midland Spur is more in line with the typology of what you'd see on Midland. Once again, Midland is a C2 commercial zone district. So, I think where the lighting may be different, it's okay to have different lighting between Midland Spur and Midland, as we have different sidewalks and different curb sections and ultimately different street furniture and those types of things. I think, one caution I might issue to the council is if we get into, discussions of aesthetics and preferences, I think we're going to have a really hard time going forward with, projects and kind of spending money installing something and then doing an about face on it. We hired a design team that I think has served us well on multiple projects in this town, including the pool, the new park across the way, and this new streetscape. So every element of it is not going to be perfect or to the liking of people, and so I think the aesthetics is a little bit of a different conversation than is that immediate effect on their homes. And so I think that's really what our aim has been, which is to mitigate that effect from the direct, light that they might get. So as Michelle mentioned, it is our plan to put up those additional shields here across the way. And, we've gone through sort of the list of what we've been able to do so far to mitigate. And I think that's helped. So I think this next step of shielding over on this side, hopefully that will make a good difference on sort of that quality of life or that impact for them across the street. So we hear it as staff, and we're doing our best to help. But I just think that our how we've approached it, how we've done it, has been appropriate, and those interpretations of the code have also been appropriate. So.
Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. And I think the next thing under my comments was to talk a little bit about the petition.
As you guys know, the town has been processing an initiative petition that was submitted by the petitioners, Ted Guy and Laura Main. So we just wanted to take a little time to give you an update on the procedural status on that petition and what's next. And the petition process and the review of petitions is a technical and mandatory procedure, and the town has been following the process as it's laid out in the Colorado Constitution, state statute, and the town charter. And as you know, the petitioners submitted their petition packets in January, and that then triggers a review by the town clerk of those petitions for sufficiency to make sure that they comply with all of these technical requirements. And in that review, it was determined that there were a number of deficiencies on certain signatures or signatures pages, which then result in those signatures being invalid. And so, for example, there's a certain window in which signatures on the petitions could be obtained, and there were some signatures that were outside that window. There were signatures by people who were not elected, eligible voters in town. So those are signatures that would be invalid. Some of the technical things, there was evidence of disassembly of some of the petition packets. There were some packets that were completely disassembled, just signature pages, and those types of signatures needed to be invalid. So in completing this review, again, these technical requirements, Pam conferred with her municipal colleagues and ultimately determined that there were an insufficient number of valid signatures that would allow for that petition to proceed to you all for review. And unlike in state statute, under the town's charter, there's an opportunity for petitioners to submit supplemental signatures and corrections to signatures. And the petitioners undertook that remedy and submitted some additional signatures and petition packets. Pam, as town clerk, completed that additional round of review of those signatures, combining the initial ones that were submitted with the supplemental signatures, still didn't meet that threshold of the threshold for valid signatures for that initiative petition to proceed to council. So following that review, petitioners, we've had some correspondence with petitioners in which they have introduced some additional evidence that goes towards explaining some of these deficiencies, including disassembly or the evidence of disassembly of petition packets. And that's information that would be relevant to making determinations on petition adequacy. The kind of the posture that we were in with that letter is we're outside the window in which to review the petitions. And so in other words, that evidence couldn't be just submitted at this time. However, there is a procedure under Title 31. This is the statutes that govern initiative petitions for municipal petitions, that allows for a protest hearing to be requested, where additional evidence can be submitted for a hearing officer to consider and then make determinations as to whether or not the determinations that were made on the initial review were correct or not. So again, this additional evidence could be considered in this protest hearing. So the petitioners have requested a protest hearing, and I've been talking to their attorney on what that would look like. Statute contemplates that the hearing officer would be the town clerk. Pam has requested to not be the hearing officer. The statute allows for town council to appoint someone else to serve as the hearing officer. We've reached out to CML's municipal clerk advisor, who's a consultant to CML, and who routinely serves as a hearing officer on these types of things, and she is willing to serve as a hearing officer. And so that kind of brings us up to speed. And so where we're at is working with the petitioners on scheduling this protest hearing. And one thing that we do need from council tonight to allow that to move forward is for the council to make a motion to appoint Karen Goldman, she's this CML, Municipal Clerk's Advisor, to serve as the hearing officer on the protest hearing. So if council is willing or to do that, we'll then proceed with scheduling that protest hearing and then seeing the outcome of it, and then taking our next steps from there in accordance with the statute and the charter. So that's the brief synopsis. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Because one question I have is, where are we as far as within the April 2nd election and otherwise, as far as timing and all that? Like, how would that fit together in these what-if scenarios, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't want to go through too many what-ifs right here, but if the protest hearing were to result in there being a finding of sufficient signatures, the initiated ordinance would then proceed to council for consideration. Council could either adopt it or it could refer it to voters. And then there are some technical timing requirements under the charter and statute. Our election is scheduled for April 2nd. And there's a limited window in which to if this were to proceed, to get that on to that April ballot. And basically, if we're within, which we are, I guess, 60 days of the date of that election, it can. I'll rephrase all the technical requirements under the statute or under the charter. The charter says that when an initiative petition is submitted, it will be set for the next regular election, unless it is outside of a period of time, and then you have to call a special election. If the next regular election is less than 60 days from the time it's submitted, council can roll over the consideration of the initiated ordinance until the next regular election, unless it's more than 150 days from that date. And if it is, then there needs to be a special election called. So the bottom line is, based on kind of where we're at timing-wise, we're looking, if this were to come to you guys and you were to choose to not adopt it, we'd likely be looking at a special election.
Jeff, for anybody that's listening online or grassroots, can you explain, you said something about disassembling the packet, and I don't know that other people quite maybe don't understand what that is. I remember when I ran for council and I had to get signatures that I had to keep the affidavit with my packet, or it was not good. Right. But can you just quickly summarize that for anybody that doesn't understand that process?
Sure. So there's a requirement under the Colorado statute that says that any disassembly of a petition packet that results in the signature pages being separated from the affidavit invalidates that petition packet.
But what is the affidavit in this case?
I guess I'll explain that.
Okay.
So the petition packet is comprised of the proposed ordinance, signature pages, and then a circulator's affidavit. And so the circulators of a petition can take the petition packet around and obtain signatures. There's requirements that the ordinance be read. There are, on the body of the initiated ordinance, the statutory warnings that are required to be displayed there. And then petitioners can sign it. There's requirements that eligible electors can sign it. The electors have to include all the information that's required by the statute, and they have to do it in the presence of the circulator. The circulator signs an affidavit saying, all these signatures I collected were done in accordance with the statute and they were done in my presence. And so I think the policy reason for that requirement is that if you have evidence that signature pages have been separated from affidavits, there creates an inference that maybe those signatures weren't done in the presence of the circulator, or that these signature pages were attached to a circulator's affidavit at another time. Again, I'm not
saying
one way or the other here, but that's kind of the policy reason for the requirement.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And however, just to go on to that, if there were evidence that said the petition was disassembled, but it was reassembled prior to circulating the petition for signatures, you know, that's a valid explanation, more or less. You know, if there are valid explanations for why a petition packet may have been disassembled that would not invalidate kind of the resulting circulating efforts.
What's that lady's name?
Her name is
Karen Goldman.
Karen Goldman, yes.
Yeah. Mayor, I move that we appoint Karen Goldman as a temporary clerk for this hearing.
As a hearing officer.
As a hearing officer.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do you want a voice vote or?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
All right, we'll keep you guys updated as this proceeds. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
This is a long manager's report.
Yeah, I know, I was like, looking at the timing. Sorry. All right, so next up, item 6A, Youth Zone update. We have Ali Naseh Sharai. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
It's close enough for me.
Okay, and you can have a seat at the table too. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so Youth Zone update. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. If you guys don't mind, I'm just going to have pass around a little handout. It's all the same information that I'm going to give you in the presentation.
They have that in their
great.
packets too. Yeah,
Right.
as well, just so you know.
Very easy.
Thanks.
And the request from Pam was just 5 to 8 minutes, so I'll go quickly. I know some of you have heard and seen this presentation quite recently, and some of you may not have any idea what Youth Zone is, so I'll go quickly. Thanks for having me, and thanks, Pam, for facilitating this. Youth Zone, we are a nonprofit based in Glenwood Springs and Rifle. We serve clients all the way from Aspen to Parachute with our mission of inspiring hopeful youth, strong families, safe communities. And we do that, we're providing assessment to every client that comes through our door, and then a whole host of services to them based on the results of that assessment. And some of the services that we're providing, if you skip ahead just a couple there, Pam, we're providing youth advocacy for kids that are in courts. We're providing counseling, substance use, education. We offer restorative justice programs. We also offer victim offender mediation. We facilitate kids' public service. And then for some of the most intense cases, we offer pretrial supervision and home detention contracts as an alternative to youth detention. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is reduce the risk that our communities see. We're doing this by supporting the family unit, so we're offering a lot of wraparound services to not just the kids, but the parents as well. We're doing it by supporting their mental health, intervening with their substance use, and then, as I mentioned, offering restorative practices. So traditionally, in the court system, it's very offender focused. In restorative justice, we bring the victim in, they have a voice at the table, and they meet with the offender and move forward together in a collaborative way. As I mentioned, we operate from Parachute to Aspen. We do have a satellite office here in Basalt. We've partnered with the Hope Center, and we rent out a space in their office just along the way so that we can meet clients in their own communities, in their own neighborhoods. We've been focused on reducing the barrier to entry, and we've determined that transportation and access to our services is one of those barriers. So as much as we possibly can, we meet with clients in their own communities, in their neighborhoods. So we're happy to have that satellite office here. And so the first thing that clients do when they come to us is they do an assessment. It takes about 2 hours. We interview the family. We kind of figure out what the incident was, if it was a ticketed offense, what happened, if there's a problem at the home, what's going on. And then we have them fill out a survey, which takes them about 15 minutes to complete. It's about 60 questions, and it helps us understand their performance in 5 different domains: substance use, alcohol use, optimism and problem solving, delinquency and community engagement, and trauma. And so based on the results of that assessment, we then authorize the services that we find appropriate to help remedy whatever situation that they're in. Sorry, Pam, I'm just jumping all around.
That's fine.
So last year, our organization served about 400 unique clients overall. That's all the way from Aspen to Parachute. And we provided 488 assessments. So you'll notice that the number of clients and the number of assessments is different. Some of these kids come back multiple times a year, 3, 4, 5, even 6 times a year. And that is the level of support that they require. They need quite a deal of extra services, and we match that for them. The only cost that they incur is $150 when they first come to see us for that assessment, and the rest of the services that they receive from us are cost-free. And we estimate that it costs about $2,000 to provide 3 to 6 months of services for these kids, which is the average length of their contract. And so Town of Basalt has been very generous in the past and has offset some of that cost for clients in Basalt. So we appreciate that, and we thank you for that. And we also do find revenue from other organizations, the school district, some of the courts, depending on which court they're in and which level of offense they've committed. And then we do fundraise for the rest. So we like to estimate that we impacted about 1,500 additional community members in our jurisdiction last year. And that's really just the family members. We didn't include neighbors, classmates, teachers, anything like that. So realistically, the number is higher. We don't see the number of clients that we're serving going up, but I like to say that they are becoming higher and higher risk. They used to come to us with just one issue that needed to be remedied, and now they're coming to us with 2 or 3 things going on at the same time concurrently. So. As I mentioned, we've been focused on eliminating barriers to our services. Cost is one of those. Like I said, it's only $150, and we find that most clients cannot pay that. It's about 50% of them cannot pay. And so that does not prohibit them from receiving our services, but it does require us to then go find money in different places. So again, you guys have been very generous in supporting a portion of that cost for clients in Basalt. Transportation, as I mentioned, is one, so we try to go meet the clients where they are in their communities. We've also gotten to the point where about 75% of our direct client-facing staff is bilingual, and then we offer 24/7 interpretation services to no cost for the clients. So that has been another way to tackle the barrier of language. And then we're also focusing on staffing barriers, which is no surprise for anyone that is trying to hire employees or qualified staff members. So we're focused on maintaining and in some cases surpassing cost of living increases and trying to make flexible work arrangements for kids, employees with children and things like that. So. I want to skip over our organization as a whole since I don't have a ton of time with you guys, and I want to focus on Basalt and the number of and type of clients that we've served here in Basalt, because it's more important to you guys, I think, to see that. So last year we served 17 kids in Basalt. 74% of them are male, 36% female. So there is a bit of a skew there. In terms of over-serving the males. And that there potentially could be that they're just coming in contact with police officers more, or maybe their families are referring them more. The racial breakdown, I'm not surprised to see those rates there. I think it is representative of the community in Basalt. And then about 60% of the clients that we serve in Basalt are coming straight from the court. So they've either been written into Basalt Municipal, they've been written into Pitkin County or Eagle County Court, or they've been written into 9th Judicial District Court. And then the remainder of those kids are coming from law enforcement agents who have withheld a ticket and requested that they complete a youth zone program instead. and the remainder are coming from the schools, who they've identified that there's an additional problem that they don't have the resources to solve, and they've referred them to us as partners. And so that's in line with the rest of our organization in terms of where these clients are coming to us from. And we like to see that the court referral number is not 80-90% of the referrals. It's nice to have them coming from the schools and from the law enforcement agents. By and large, kids are getting in trouble for possession of marijuana. That's far and above in every community that we serve. Usually drugs and alcohol are the number one offenses. But we also in Basalt are seeing theft, harassment, and menacing. There have been a few traffic offenses. And then nicotine vaping is really common. And that one is rapidly growing. And I don't think that's unique to Basalt, but it is something to just be aware of. The good news in all of this is that the services that we're providing do work. So the kids that work with us in Basalt, 94% of them do not reoffend while they're working with us. And that is higher than our organization as a whole. So they're having good success with that here in Basalt. And then 89% of them are successful at completing their contract. So the services that we've authorized for them, that's not as successful as some other jurisdictions in our organization as a whole. So it's an interesting discussion to have there about they're not reoffending, but they're also, in some cases, not completing all of the things that we've asked them to complete. And then this number is 12% of them reported an improvement in one of those survey areas that we monitor. And that is significantly lower than our organization as a whole. We typically see 20 to 30% improvement. So while these kids are not reoffending, they're not getting in trouble, they're also not changing they don't feel differently afterwards. They're not saying that they're more optimistic at the same rates that some of their peers in other areas are, which is just a really interesting metric, and we take that all into consideration when we're serving them. So I wanted to try and respect the 5 to 8 minutes, and I hope I did that quickly. So I want to offer you guys a chance to ask any questions if you have any. Make any recommendations for us and how we can serve your town and your kids in a better way. And we're open to any kind of feedback.
Thanks, Sully. Any questions from the council?
If you don't mind, I'll just add that I think I say this every year, but it's true every year, is that Youth Zone is a tremendous resource to the municipal court in town for juvenile defendants, either that come into the court or before they get to the court. We're able to make referrals to Youth Zone. Their staff is able to meet with these individuals and really spend the time with them that I can't as the prosecutor or the court can't otherwise. And it just allows for just a great mechanism for there to be that kind of thoroughness and review of these types of cases. And so I'll just say that I appreciate all the services that Youth Zone provides to the court here in Basalt.
Thanks, Jeff.
Sure, thanks. Does that fall kind of under the diversion
Exactly.
program? Yeah, because I think that
So like
huge impact, right?
Like I said, about 60% of the kids that we serve in Basalt are participating in that diversion program. We're getting them out of the court into a spot where they can receive services that are more appropriate for them as kids.
Yeah, that's a better outcome in
Exactly.
the long run. Yeah, that's great. What do you think about the survey outlier bit? That was kind of intriguing how you were pointing that out. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean,
theories?
I think every community is different, right? And the good news is that they're staying out of trouble, right? So although we want to move the dial in every metric, we want to keep them out of trouble, we want to make sure they finished all their classes, and we want them to feel better about themselves. Sometimes it's not possible, right? That's the ultimate goal. But in this case, we have good metrics that they're all staying out of trouble, and some of them are feeling good about themselves, right? So it helps us understand where we have some shortcomings in different communities. And if you look farther down Colorado River Valley, the farther down you get, it's kind of the opposite sometimes. These kids are getting in trouble all the time, and they're not finishing any of their classes, but they feel drastically more optimistic, and they feel like they're more engaged with their community, even though they're still getting charges in court. So every community is different, and there are bright spots regardless.
That's great. Staying out of trouble, and maybe there's an opportunity with mental health. There's something else that we can figure out here.
Yeah, exactly. And if they indicate things like that in our assessment, we have some mental health providers and counselors in-house. We've contracted with some third-party providers, and there's always a way to get them the support that they need. So.
That's great.
Do you refer back and forth with other organizations in the valley?
Yeah, exactly. So we do a lot of partnership with the school districts, and a lot of the referrals are to and from Family Resource Center. And then occasionally we'll do some more, when they're not quite the right fit for us, we'll refer to Garfield County CMP, and those are typically for if the family needs support with food, housing, shelter, things like that, that we don't directly serve them for.
That's really good.
So,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, we're really engaged with all of the different CMPs in our counties, and we're always finding ways to provide as many services as we can without overlapping with other agencies. So we've really focused on that kind of communication this year.
Do you see anything that we could be doing, as a community, as a town, to help prevent some of these behaviors that you're working with kids on? Like, is there anything glaring that you see that there's like a hole that we should fill?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not unique to Basalt. Like I said, drug and alcohol use is the top charge in every community. So, and that the vaping one is growing. So, I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, giving them opportunities to do other things, and spend their time in a way that's not around those things is probably the number one way to do it. So I'm thinking of a client that I worked with here in Basalt, and we just went down to the river and went fishing, and he had some of the equipment, but not all of the equipment. So we just loaned him some of the gear and said, here's a good way to do something in your neighborhood that's productive and not go down a different path. So that would be my I know it's not very concrete, but.
No, I mean, I agree. I see after-school engagement as kind of an issue for kids in middle school and high school.
It's tough too. We talk a lot about where their families are working and where their families are spending most of their time, and it is a lot of people are commuting to work, and that takes up a large portion of the time after school. So yeah, I think finding opportunities for these kids to spend their time in ways that are enriching and productive, and that keeps them out of trouble.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ali, for taking the time to come speak with us. Good discussion.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us, and we appreciate the financial support and all the support you guys give us as community members. So,
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
thanks, Pam, for facilitating this.
Appreciate you coming. In person. That's awesome.
I like coming. Thanks.
All right, next item up, item 6B, the 2024 Summer Concert Series update. Wait for this one.
This feels a little funny after such a serious topic, but I can make this one pretty quick. We are really grateful for everyone who contributed to the 2023 inaugural concert series at the River Park and Triangle Park, including all the generous sponsors and nonprofits who volunteered to serve concessions, and our amazing community who danced, laughed, and enjoyed the gatherings that were offered at Triangle Square and the River Park. Concerts are not only a great place to see amazing talent, our friends and neighbors, but also a powerful tool for Basalt's economic vitality and resiliency. There are many direct benefits of community events such as these, such as supporting local restaurants and retailers, and indirect benefits, contributing to our community identity, creating a strong sense of place that tourists want to return to, and creating access for all ages and backgrounds of our community to get together. We found during phase 1, construction of the Midland Streetscape project, that the concerts generated an undeniable energy and nightlife regardless of the construction. With lessons learned from our event staff and our outstanding lineup booked by our concert curator, Brent Compton, we're excited to dance with our friends in the great lawn of the River Park Wednesday nights this year, starting June 19th through the 28th, and eat, drink, and be merry at our beloved local establishments. We have 2 new things for the lineup, and that's really the cause of this update. One is that we'll be featuring more intimate performances at Triangle Park every other Friday, starting May 31st. And those we'll use Triangle Park as a venue for local artists to headline their own evening, and also as an incubator stage for new talent that needs to grow their skills and get used to performing in front of Basalt's growing crowds. Our second new addition for 2024 is an event to be named, scheduled for July 6th. We've chosen July 6th to avoid competing with established area 4th of July parades and activities and fireworks. It's a Saturday. And it'll be a full-day event from about noon through the evening with multiple bands. And something we're really looking forward to is our first annual boat parade. So we'll put in at the White River Park and float down to DeRocks Park. We've had the art base in the library commit to participating with us in that, and so we're excited to release the details and the entries as it grows a little bit closer, but should be a really cool way to round out a Basalt 4th of July activity. We are looking for a name for that event, and so it's on the town's Facebook page. You can vote for a name and help us call it something. Our next step in that is a call to artists to design a poster for that day. So we want to get the name, and then we'll put a call out to artists. So just in short, we're leveraging Basalt's community amenities both in our historic district and Willits to bridge our neighborhoods, create more opportunities for our community to gather, and create a strong foundation for this developing pillar of Basalt's economy. Stay tuned to basalt.net for the release of the lineup, and I'm not going to tell you anybody, but you're going to be stoked. It's not Big Head Todd and the Monsters, but it's pretty huge. We also still have applications open for concert sponsors and nonprofits through, I think, 2 more weeks. So that is the fun update, and happy to take any questions you might have.
When's the concert lineup come out?
I think we'll probably release it late April, early May. We don't want to jinx anybody that we're negotiating contracts with right now.
Sure.
And then for those folks, the local talent that would like to perform at Triangle Park, how do they get involved?
Yeah, anybody who's interested, you can look on the town website under the summer concert series, and there's an email there, events@basalt.net. Send us your inquiry.
Good question. Any other questions? Thanks for the update. We're excited.
Our pleasure.
All right, I think we have one more before the council action. So this is 6C, Midland Streetscape 2024 update. Catherine and Dave, and I guess Mitzi too.
Dave's changed.
Oh, okay.
Wow, Dave, you look so different.
You're pinch
I think we
hitting,
do
okay.
have Dave online.
Yeah.
I think he's But thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us tonight. We're just bringing to you an update on the project, on the Midland Streetscape project for 2024. As you know, we usually update council at the second meeting of each month, but with construction starting in early March, we wanted to get in front of you to get ahead of that with an update tonight. Next slide, please, James. So first, we want to remind you of the goals of the projects and that they are rooted in economic vitality, social enhancements, infrastructure resiliency, and environmental sustainability. All of those goals align with the town's published vision and values. These goals will be achieved through various elements of the project, such as those listed before you, which are expanded sidewalks that will allow businesses and restaurants to extend into those outdoor spaces, improved ADA access with more connected and contiguous sidewalks and crosswalks, improved lighting for safety, traffic calming elements such as flashing beacons at pedestrian crossings, a connected stormwater system that provides treatment before discharging to the river, expansion of the electrical and communications infrastructure for more resiliency, and then also enhanced connection to the Basalt River Park for a more integrated downtown, since we've been enjoying that park so much. We do know that despite all these benefits, downtown, that will help downtown businesses thrive in the future, they will experience some construction impacts this year. And Mitzi is going to talk through the next two slides that explain how the town will be supporting our downtown businesses this year.
So there's a few different ways of supporting businesses. Michelle just mentioned the concert series that will be going on, and we saw through last summer that people would come Wednesdays and get takeout or go out after and linger in town before, after, during. So the concert series, again, that's June 19th through August 28th. And then Midland Money, I believe that there is a spot already in the budget for Midland Money. Probably start distributing that also in June to go in concert with the concerts and other events. Again, last year we distributed that at different events at Sunday Market, at the Basalt concerts. People could come and get it from Town Hall. So basically coming to town events to support the town, and then your gift is this $20 voucher. Businesses Open campaign, and that we are working with the chamber on, and I'm meeting with Chris, the director of the chamber, tomorrow to talk about some of what that looks like. But it's really trying to project out to the community. I'm not sure how far all the way up to Aspen, that we are open, please come visit. We always have pedestrian access, our businesses are open, come visit Basalt. And then the Basalt Sunday Market are part of the business support. There's a little bit more with communications, which is the next slide. So as we're ramping up again to start on March 4th, we're working on a fact sheet right now that will get out to the people. We did send out the information that this project is starting to over 900 people, and then also put it on our social media channels and in our regular Tuesday ads in the Aspen Daily News. We updated Let's Talk Basalt just with a little bit of information on when it's starting, and we'll continue to update that throughout the project. And we also post all of our newsletters on there, so you can sign up for a newsletter on there, and you can also read our entire archive on there. And we also send out a general project newsletter that's more informational when there are milestones, and then a weekly construction impact, so you know what streets are closed, or where you're going to see one lane that week and what the impacts are. And then we have a project email address. And then in addition to that, we also have PSAs that go to radio, paid newspaper ads, signage and VMS boards, press releases for milestones, informational flyers. Sometimes we hang them up around town if it's necessary, all the way to Willits. Outreach at town events, if we have a table at the market, or if we have a table at the concert series to tell people about the project. And then sending information through our partners. So I sent information to the schools this week. I talked to Chris before we made our announcement, so she knew that this was coming, so she could talk to businesses. And then we also have a display at the Basalt Library, and they have a permanent display, but then every week when we send out our construction email, they also hang that up so people can see. And then our regular outreach to HOAs. So we're just starting and trying to keep it up with people and keep people informed of the milestones that will be coming.
Next slide, please. So as Mitzi mentioned, construction is scheduled to begin on March 4th. in order to create a safe and secure site, it is important that the stormwater system be installed first, so that runoff can be routed to that system to prevent any flooding of the site or any neighboring properties. That's why it's required that the project start at the west end at the spur, and then we'll be working east towards Homestead. Once the storm system is installed, shallow utilities will follow, along with demolition and grading that will occur as they work towards the surface. We will always maintain pedestrian access to businesses. In the pictures that are before you, it shows some of the means that we used in the first phase to have that contiguous pedestrian access with the steel ramping that we'll have temporarily set up. And then also you see some pictures of both the storm and the shallow utility infrastructure, which is, as in the name, much more shallow than the water line installation that we experienced late in the fall. Next slide, please, James. And the next steps will include installation of the irrigation system, sidewalk and street grading, and then of course followed by the new sidewalks themselves. And in these pictures, you'll see how the existing buildings will be protected during various phases of the project. The most commonly with that plastic sheathing on the front of buildings. And then once concrete has been placed, next slide please, James, you'll see paving will occur, and then ultimately landscaping and street amenities will be followed as things wrap up. Next slide please, James. Ultimately, the project will be occurring in you'll notice 3 different zones, with zone 1 being the first that will occur March 4th through spring. Zone 2, that work will occur in late spring into summer. And then zone 3 will be the final phase, and that will occur late summer and into the fall. And of course, this is a bubble diagram, but through Mitzi's communication, we'll be continuing to update people on their, direct impacts as the schedule tightens up. And then, of course, we'll be back in front of council with our regularly scheduled monthly updates, and we'll have more specifics as we continue on in the project. Next slide, please, Jay.
So we'll also be really getting out the message of where to park when this starts. The major areas of parking will be on the spur, on Two Rivers Road, and on the east side of Midland, east of downtown, like by the church. And they'll also be, hopefully, we'll be pushing Basalt Connect and Ride Rafta and riding your bikes, and then WeCycle when it starts, and then parking at the school when that starts, to let people know about that. And just to keep reminding people that pedestrian access is open throughout. So this map will be very important throughout the project. And they can even vote.
Last slide, James. And that's all we really have for you all this evening, and are more than happy to answer any questions you have at the moment.
So I have one on the zones. I appreciate that, and the kind of the high-level dates for each of those zones. Is that kind of all encompassing for all the activities in the zone, or will we start one and then there'll be irrigation and be trailing and kind of work? How does that work as far as the sequence?
I mean, there will be some overlap without a doubt. There'll be a point when it makes sense to do landscaping. That won't happen right off the bat, but the intent is to have the sidewalks, all the hardscape really be wrapped up in zone 1, or getting close to being wrapped up before they move on to zone 2. So that includes the concrete sidewalks, and then also an initial pave. They'll come back for a final pave at the end of the project to make sure it's clean. But yeah, I'd say the most heavy impacts to zone 1 are in those dates I explained, and then they'll continue into zone 2 and zone 3. One of the more difficult parts about the project is right now the road grade is shaped like this, and ultimately we want it to drain to the center for it to be shaped like this. So that those transition zones, there'll be some overlap and some back and forth. But this is meant to explain when, the highest and most impactful times will be in each of those. So hopefully that's helpful, and we can provide, like I said, more detail as we keep going.
It'd be good to kind of keep people apprised of the high-level schedule in the updates, in addition to like, this is what we did, this is what's coming next week, as that
Yep.
moves along for planning purposes.
Okay, that's good. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the Basalt Connect as an alternative to transportation, and I was actually thinking when you were talking about the different communications methods, that if we have some kind of flyer or handout or whatever that's being used elsewhere, to give that to the drivers to have on board the shuttles as well.
Yeah, thank you. We did that last year too, so love it.
Any impact to boat traffic going up to Route I?
No, we'll always have one lane of traffic open, and they're aware, especially after being here last summer, of the heavy recreation traffic and the larger vehicles we see going up. So it shouldn't be an impact, yeah. Other than they'll need to slow down.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions or comments? All right, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Appreciate the update.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, next up, we have an interview and appointment. This is item 7A, Parks and Open Space and Trails Committee. Interview and appointment of prospective post member, Mrs. Michelle.
Well, lucky for you, you get this time back. Mercedes ended up having a conflict at the last minute, so we're going to reschedule her to a future date.
Okay, we need to do anything procedurally for that, or just move along? Okay. So we already covered 7A5 during the consent agenda, so we'll move on to 7B, Resolution Number 6, Series of 2024 Resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, granting approval for the 2024 Basalt Sunday Market on Midland Spur and Lions Park in downtown Basalt. This is Sarah and Michelle.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. So this is a resolution, yes, asking you to approve the summer Basalt Sunday Market for the 2024 season. Generally, this is something that Council would see as part of consent agenda, but we did want to bring it to you tonight just to have a little discussion about the changes from last year. Last year, excuse me, last year we saw the market, due to construction on Midland Spur, it was relocated across to the new Basalt River Park. It was a really nice way to highlight the new park. It's a beautiful venue, but unfortunately it did see a little bit less success in that location for various reasons and made it less ideal. One being the split between having the regular market over on the Basalt River Park, and the other half was like the kids' play area, the bounce house, the crafting area and such, was still located over here, on Lions Park adjacent to the Two Rivers roadside. That was due to, we had new turf put down. We didn't want to interfere with the water lines. There was a number of reasons why really that wasn't going to work to put the kids' play area over there. So that was, a concern of fire and of police was splitting that. We had people acting as crossing guards and such, going back and forth. It was just a little bit of a challenge. Vendors had a more challenging time with the setup and the breakdown. They had to get there quite early. They had to, schlep their stuff into the park, and it was a little bit difficult. It took a lot more time. They had more difficulties with figuring out where to park during this time. We had issues with electrical access, sometimes waterlogged turf. But really what kind of drilled it home for me was hearing that folks had a difficult time with accessibility. So, some folks didn't really think twice about it and were able to walk through just fine. But then, you have a lot of differently able people or people with strollers that really did have a difficult time traversing the river park's uneven terrain. So we also heard from a lot of our vendors that just did not do quite as well in that location. You know, folks would kind of do their initial pass through instead of kind of passing right back through the market to maybe get to, you know, one end or the other. They would kind of just circulate out and go by the river. And so just, you know, unfortunately, just didn't turn into such a successful location for our vendors. So to that end, the resolution is written. We do bring this for your approval every year because of a council town policy where anything that is on a public property would be reviewed by you for a multi-day event. Again, usually that's just a consent agenda item, but tonight just we wanted to ensure that, you know, we've given this a lot of thought and we really feel that the best location is back along Midland Spur. We do have a market manager that's working on mapping out the locations and taking advantage of that extra length of the spur to really lay this out a little bit differently and create better accessibility and excitement. So with that, Michelle, if you had anything to add to that end?
Not to, just as an FYI, there are also a lot of electrical issues with running the Sunday market. So we had a lot of challenges with having the market in the park and not having conduit in locations and having access to multiple outlets over there and having to secure power as it's running across different areas. On the spur here, one of the things about the light posts is that they do have outlets and it is designed in part to host the Sunday market here as well. So that is an aspect of the design over here too, to make it easier.
So yeah, we know that some council members were pretty excited about having it across when it was first across the street last year, and that's why I wanted to bring it to you and see if you had any questions or any comments, or if you're willing to approve the resolution.
All right. So what are our questions and comments?
I have some pretty serious concerns about parking. I'm sure you guys have thought about this. We're going to have construction going on downtown, which is going to remove all of that parking, or a good portion of it. And then if we move the market back onto the spur, then that parking's gone. So where are people going to park? I mean, granted, I would, in a perfect world, everybody would take the Basalt Connect and ride their bicycles, but let's be realistic. There will be people driving, and we don't want to lose that traffic for our vendors either.
Well, we do have, I mean, we still have Two Rivers Road, which is a wonderful length of parking. I assume we'll be doing what we did last year with the schools. We were encouraging folks to park over at the elementary school campus, or the middle school, elementary school campus. We had created some signage that was directing folks how to get, you know, from that. It's a really quick walk to downtown, and once you do it once, you realize it's like a third of a mile before you hit downtown. If you go down Swinging Bridge path. So I think we'll really highlight those different areas where we would like to see folks parking, and really just encourage, you know, those alternative modes of transportation as well. I do have, you know, a number of folks that I know that take their bikes. They're fortunate enough to live in town or in a biking distance. And we'll really highlight those areas where we want to see people parking and help them find those spaces.
The other thing I would just insert about the parking is on a Sunday, at least my observation is there's not, you know, a lot of competition for parking, particularly in the morning. I mean, I think you have Sunday Mass down at the other end of Midland Avenue, but otherwise the businesses that are, you know, Monday through Friday businesses aren't parking. And, you know, I think restaurants certainly are going some of them open for breakfast, but, you know, kind of ramp up for stuff in the afternoon. So, you know, I think the additional parking that we've put all along, you know, all the way down to the River Park, or excuse me, down to Old Pond Park, you know, added spaces. And so, you know, there could be fewer because of the construction, but you know, I think the posture from staff was that the benefits of moving it back over here with that parking constraint potentially still outweighed the alternative over there with some of the issues that we outlined.
Is there any opportunity, because the other thing too is now Midland Spur is one way. So it's like, it's not like we could like close off a portion of it for the market and then have a portion of it open to
Oh,
park
right.
anymore.
Yeah.
So is there an opportunity to have like all of the booths like sidewalk facing and allow traffic behind and parking?
I don't think we're gonna want traffic going through there at all. I think that would be problematic. Mixing with the booths, if I'm understanding what you're saying.
Well, I'm saying like the back of the booth, like the front of the booth would face Lions Park. So instead of having booths on both sides of Midland Spur like we have in the past, like everything would be on one side.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I think, well, ideally, I think what we're getting is trying to grow it and get a lot more vendors this year because of the additional space. So I think it's mapped out to take up quite a bit more. And I would guess, I mean, Chief is here in the audience. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but anytime like you have those, even with the vendor tents, if they were on the sidewalk and kind of facing in toward the park, there's still going to be people walking to, kind of beeline it to their favorite spot or whatever, in the street if the sidewalk is taken up. So I think that would be, make them pretty uncomfortable.
How is the one-way going to work with Twin Rivers access and expanding, I'm just trying to visualize how that might play out.
Well, Twin Rivers access was closed off during those hours historically. And so it'll just, essentially be they have to just kind of come through only one way as opposed to, multiple, two ways that they did in the past. So I think it'll largely work the same as it did. And the booths won't respect the parking space lines necessarily. They won't need to, they can square up to the curb, I would presume. So yeah, I think people would be able to pull in, unload, do their setup and then continue on and go find a space.
So they would
to park.
set up that way, they would come in the normal way.
Yeah.
One way, do their thing. The Twin Rivers folks, during that time, wouldn't be able to get in and out. It would be, that's how we've done it in the past?
That's how it's been in the past,
Well, we've had to
during the
maintain-
market.
We've maintained a fire access, emergency access
Yeah.
road, of course, and that's a 20-foot road, an access road. We do give the Twin Rivers folks, plenty of notice ahead of the market. This is going to be going on, and it's great. They're really, we get in the rhythm of knowing it. I believe that they are able to, if they had to, really had to truly get out through that emergency access.
I remember seeing
Yeah.
some kind of
Yeah, we
single lane
don't
or something.
stop them, prohibit them, really, but it's kind of like this is going on, and it just kind of naturally, folks have always just kind of planned, their days around the situation. I haven't ever had an altercation in, going on 7 years that I've been working with the
That was
market.
before we replaced the lights.
Right.
But, yeah, so I think it'll operate just the same as it did in the past, rather than having people being able to go two ways, we're getting folks conditioned to understanding that it's a one-way street. I don't see any difference really happening there. We'll have that planned out. We'll work with, fire in particular has a very specific laneage requirement that they need, distance between, the vendor and having that emergency access. So we will, make sure that is fully planned out. We can't start the market without it.
Potentially it'll be easier because we won't have as many vendors at the top of the spur.
Top being,
By CC's.
by CC's, okay.
We have such an incredibly longer distance down here past the end. So we have the opportunity to have the band playing and actually on the stage, have the bounce houses on the lawn so parents can listen to music and see their kids at the same time, have the petting zoo over here, have the food vendors, and have a lot of it happen more so that it's further down and more cohesive. Right now, and still have some vendors at the other end, but I think we have a lot more space at this end to kind of plan it out and map it out a little bit further. So it's hard to imagine right now, which is why we'll return with a site plan after we've worked through some of the things. But we're anticipating that we have space for up to 20 more vendors.
Has the Two River Condos people been informed that the market will be moving back again?
Well, not before we get your approval.
Yeah.
Well, okay, true. But I am concerned about that they probably got used to not having it there last year. And I'm not gonna lie, I loved having it in the park. Is there any possibility of rectifying any of the issues over the next however many months and years to get it back in the park? I know the park wasn't really designed for it because it wasn't foreseen that it might move, but I am spoiled now.
I mean, the park's awesome. The biggest thing I see is overcoming the safety aspect with the crosswalk and, you know, and with the cars there's some visibility issues and things like that. So I think kind of the long pole would be, how can we get Bouncy House and Hot Wheels over on the riverside and figure that out? And then I think we can figure out the accessibility part. I mean, I know there's plenty of art fairs and things like that in parks, right? You drive around the country, you see them everywhere. So there's got to be a way we can do it. I know the turf can be wet. I know, you know, especially when you put down new sod, it's especially squishy. But I think those are things we can overcome, but we'd have to figure out how to get the Bouncy House and the Hot Wheels.
Without
awesome.
Driving on the sod. That's one thing they do. You drive up and they're able to park right here on Two Rivers Road and then kind of just roll it down the hill, you know, where the bounce houses have set up. So that was a big challenge. I will say another big challenge, you know, if we can we're overcoming the sod issues and the accessibility issues, setup was a bit of a nightmare. So I would anticipate hiring a fleet of strong 15, 16-year-olds that want to wheel in everybody's stuff every day. It was one of our biggest challenges, was having, you know, vendors that are saying, look, I just don't have, I can drive up and I can drop it off, but I don't have the strength to carry my stuff in or to even have a wagon to bring stuff in. So our market manager last year was amazing. He would show up like, I think he was there at like 6 a.m. and he was just working. I can't imagine his step counter every day. You know, he was working to get so many people in. We had a couple folks that you know, hired or were there temporarily just to help vendors get their stuff into their spaces. But it was a huge complaint. And I don't blame them. You know, they have a very, very long day. And if you know you're getting there even earlier than you know, coming from Paonia or what have you, schlepping your stuff onto, you know, a cart and dragging it somewhere, it was a challenge. It's not insurmountable, but it would be something we'd really have to think of ahead of time to make it successful.
Pardon me, the sidewalks are not vehicle rated, so I think if we can get through one more season over here on the spur, we're learning a lot of lessons about how to host the concerts better in the band shell. And if we can have one more year to kind of live and get to know that facility that much better, I think there's a way we could have a goal if that's the direction to move it back over in 25.
Are we reaching out to like the library and the post office and all of those spaces with open parking on the weekends? I mean, it's just to walk across the bridge from those locations.
We
there's
haven't in the
extra
past.
spots there, I feel like, because I agree with, you know, Elise is, you know, we're gonna tear up the rest of the parking and then put the event on what's remaining of the parking. So that it's just a little hard in my brain, and I feel like we would be better suited maybe to try to find some time to either just like maybe move it to the, and don't kill me here, but the elementary school parking lot or something like that, to where there's parking there and then people come from town to it. It could be something like, you know, maybe there's a street closure rather than the actual parking closure. You know, and I know that the safety services have to figure out even if that's possible, if we can navigate it, if we're staged appropriately. But I just, you know, you have the park, it's pretty awesome. I get that it wasn't built for it. I get that the Midland Spur was sort of planned for it. But I think this year's, you know, I just wonder how deep did we go? You know, did we talk, you know, do we even think the elementary, we're not thinking that, because then you don't have the business traffic downtown. I mean, how far down the hole did we go?
Well, one of, I think, the scariest pieces of feedback we received last year is that as the market was wrapping up, we had multiple vendors say that they can pass on Basalt and they can go to other markets that are easier to set up and to deal with and have more traffic. And that was pretty stunning because frankly, as staff, we loved going there too. But hearing just all the challenges of getting their stuff, their heavy things out to the lawn and not being able to drive up and push it out of the car and set these things up, and kind of the reality of that was pretty stunning.
Yeah, but I mean, so could we close from Midland or what is it from? Yeah, so like the intersection over to the end of the parking lot spur and let the parking still be available and have that as access for emergency vehicles to get around and still keep that parking, but you actually close down the road, which you lose less parking and you have the space and they're dropping it off on the heavy spots. That's why I'm just curious is how deep do we go? Mm-hmm. Chief is probably like, absolutely not.
I think you should know that between last summer and this year, I mean, there was a lot of conversation and a lot of deep dive. You know, we have a market manager that's having regular contact with these vendors. You know, there's very practical reasons for citing these things, as you've heard from Access. You know, elementary school doesn't have electricity that would be, you know, suitable to meet the needs of these folks like accessibly. And I think it's this year we know there's going to be challenges all around with the construction schedule. But that being said, I think people will still want to come to Sunday market and they will find out a way to get here. I mean, last summer there was no parking out here and people still figured out how to get here. They used, you know, the parking down there, albeit, but I think, you know, you have a lot of people coming and instead of driving, they can figure out a different way to get into town. And, you know, I think we'll get that feedback of, hey, this isn't working for us. But if we're down to 10 vendors because they're going elsewhere, then that doesn't feel good either. So, you know, I think we just have to, we're looking for that balance of, you know, pleasing the vendors, pleasing the folks that, you know, had the accessibility issues, and then also, you know, the patrons who, you know, just are used to coming. So it's not, I guess it's not perfect, but it seems like this is where it's historically been and it's set up for it with, you know, the greatest amount of ease and functionality. So, I mean, ultimately it's up to you guys, but that's, I mean, this wasn't entered into lightly, you know, by any means. There was a lot of heads put together to address all the things. So
I'd just like to say, I wouldn't want to do anything to alienate vendors, just because I feel like the market does have, you know, such good momentum going. And I will say that I am one of those parents that did not get to go to the market because I was stuck at the bouncy house on Hot Wheels. And I wasn't going to cross a busy road to go shop, so I just never did. I just stayed at the Hot Wheels.
Which is cool.
But Hot Wheels in my house. I don't know why they like those Hot Wheels.
Because they're not at the house.
You can give your Hot Wheels to them.
I would love to. I would love to.
Incorporate.
Set me up with that phone number. So yeah, I would. In the past, I've been able to shop, you know, and see the kids. Yeah. And so yeah, I'm glad to know I'm not the only one that had that issue.
Yeah, I don't think we can have the crosswalk be part of the.
I think we're all in
site
agreement on that
plan.
one.
Like, it's just, that's a non-starter.
I think we're all in agreement on that, for sure.
I mean, I guess the number, how many can we have on the spur side? Like, how many vendors? Or will we be able to expand the number we had previously? What kind of attrition do you think we would have if we kept it over there? Like, realistically, like, you know, what does that look like?
Well, I think in discussions with the existing vendors about moving it back over here, you know, nearly 100% of them have said, we'll return. We'll return and and there's renewed interest. I think the other thing you have going is that kind of having this new infrastructure, having new pavement, having new sidewalks and all of these things is a draw, because if you think of other farmers markets, they're all on pavement, and this is part of the reason why. So, you know, I think there's a way, if we can continue to build it on this side, once the Midland Streetscape project is complete and we have, you know, parcel E across the street back for our use, there's probably a way to figure out how to even shift it over there, add other things that are over there that aren't bounce houses, that are something separate, you know, just how to do different things that just reduces the stress, but also makes it feasible for these vendors, because this is just, you know, the picture is beautiful having it in the river park, but the reality of the morning and lugging the heavy things is just a deal breaker for a lot of these guys. And we frankly heard we are competing for vendors with places like Vail. And that's tough, because that means that, you know, there are a lot of people in Vail. There are a handful of people that come to Basalt. And so we really have to do what we can if we want to make this viable work for them as well. And that's the trick amongst maintaining our friendship across departments with the police department, because that was really tricky last year.
Well,
I will support movement to Midland Spur for 2024 and ask that we continue the conversation with the possibility of making it work in the park for 2025. And also that we immediately tell our Two Rivers condo friends.
and make sure we have a solid plan with them in and out. I mean, I know we, you know, just, it's gonna be different, make sure it's really clear.
And I'm gonna add at least talk about closing it from Midland to the Spur. So it's actually behind us, not here where the parking is.
Oh, right, where the bus stops are.
Correct, where the bathroom is, where the bus stops is, where there's concrete and street and all the things that the vendors want.
All right.
So, motion of some sort?
Yeah, Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 6, series of 2024.
For the year 2024.
Does that work?
We come back every year, so.
Yeah, this will have to come back next year, so it's only.
Well, as opposed to just being on the consent agenda
Oh,
next
sure.
year.
Yeah.
That it will come back to us next year.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
No worries.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, so all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Doesn't sound like we have any opposed, so. Yeah, just please look into the park for next year and just keep exploring how to activate it. I mean, the concert stuff's great. Keep doing all that stuff. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 7C, public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 2, series of 2024. An ordinance of the town council of the town of Basalt, Colorado, granting historic designation, site plan review, special review, and historic incentives for the construction of a basement under the miner's cabin and conversion of the miner's cabin into an accessory dwelling at 159 East Homestead Drive, Basalt, Colorado. James.
Thanks. We have the applicant here this evening. We've got Rolf Frazier. This is a public hearing and first reading of an ordinance on an application submitted by Rolf requesting historic designation, special review, site plan review, and historic incentives to designate the property at 159 East Homestead Drive as historic and to convert the existing miner's cabin at the rear of the property into an accessory dwelling unit. The property subject to the application is the property at 159 East Homestead Drive, and you can see it located right here, adjacent to the Luxinger Stairs that go down between Midland and Homestead Drive. The subject property is about 7,400 square feet. It contains a single-family residence at the front of the property, and this is the single-family house adjacent to Homestead Drive. And it also contains about a 490 square foot miner's cabin that is located just off the Luxinger Stairs path that goes down to Midland. It is currently used as storage, and it was built in the early 1900s, or moved to the site in the early 1900s. The miner's cabin is identified on the town's historic walking tour as the first minister's cabin in Basalt, and this is the plaque that's on it. The applicant has recently renovated the main house that you saw in the earlier photo, and the miner's cabin doesn't currently have a foundation or running water. And there is one off-street parking space up here on the site. And the property is zoned R3TN. The proposal, as was identified, is for the applicant to designate the property as historic, which enables the protection of both structures against demolition, and it would allow him to take advantage of historic incentives to be able to construct a basement under the miner's cabin and to convert it into an ADU. So once again, here's the main house adjacent to Homestead Drive. The miner's cabin is located back here at the rear of the property. The review process requires one round of review by the Planning and Zoning Commission and Town Council, with P&Z making a recommendation to Town Council and public hearings at both levels of review. In reviewing the application, the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff identified a series of discussion items that are on the front page of your staff memo. They include consistency with the master plan. In the memo to the Planning and Zoning Commission that you have in your packet, staff identified a series of goals and objectives in the master plan that relate to encouraging preservation of historic structures and incorporating ADUs into the fabric of the existing neighborhoods in the town. And staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission felt that both of those goals were exhibited by this application. Other topics included the historic designation. The P&Z strongly felt that the property warrants historic designation, as the structures were built before 1900, and they have the historic significance of having housed Basalt's first minister in town. Also, staff finds that the proposed renovation of the historic cabin to be consistent with the historic integrity of the property, as the applicant will be removing a addition that was done in the 1990s and restoring the structure back to its traditional form, as you can see on the upper photos. Additionally, the basement that is proposed under the structure will help firm up the structure in a structural manner, since it doesn't currently have a foundation, as you can see in this photo that was in the staff memo. So it will help preserve that structure. The historic incentives that are being requested include variation from the dimensional requirements to allow for the ADU on a property that's slightly under the 8,000 square foot that would normally be the trigger point for allowing for an ADU in R3TN, because the lot is 7,400 square feet. The historic incentives also allow for an ADU to be over the maximum ADU size of 1,000 square foot, and so this is proposed to be a couple hundred square foot bigger than that. And then also the historic incentives would allow for a waiver of the off-street parking requirement for the ADU, as there is not an opportunity to provide additional off-street parking because the property slopes down pretty considerably from Homestead Drive to the grade of the main house. Staff has included a condition that the applicant provide in his lease for tenants of the ADU a notice that there is not off-street parking that's being provided with the ADU. And other topics that were include ice and snow mitigation on Lexinger Stairs. As I noted, Lexinger Stairs are located just to the west of the property, and they come out down by Cafe Bernard's. There's been issues in the past with ice and snow coming off of the main house onto the path, but in the applicant's renovation of the main structure, they put up snow railing and heat tape on the main house, and it's done a good job of mitigating that issue. So the applicant has proposed a similar scenario on the renovation of the miner's cabin. And that's been reiterated in the draft conditions that you have in the ordinance. The applicant has also included proposal for deed restricting the ADU and the property consistent with the town's normal deed restriction for an ADU, which would require one of the two residences to be occupied as a primary residence. The Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the application with the conditions that you have in the draft ordinance before you. So this evening, staff would recommend council taking comments from the applicants, conducting a public hearing because it's a notice public hearing, and then providing council discussion, and ultimately, if you're comfortable, you could approve the ordinance on first reading. Rolf and Seth, do you guys have additional comments for the council?
It's very hard to follow that presentation, James. It's very thorough. I think it might be helpful if you want to ask any questions. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar walking down the alley with 3 or 4 years of restoration or reconstruction of the main house. So it's a similar approach, except the main house actually had foundations to start with. So we'll have to do a wee bit more on this one. Any questions for anyone?
I think mostly out of curiosity's sake, do you lift then the cabin?
I would love to lift the cabin, but as is one of the issues, we've no way to get a crane there because of it's one. I think there may only be 2 or 3 properties on the whole of Homestead that don't have off-street parking, and ours is one of them because of the grade and the wonderful flower embankments that our predecessors had built. So I can't drive a vehicle down there, and the alley's not wide enough.
Do you live in the main unit?
Yes.
So my concern is that this ADU is really just going to be a short-term rental.
Well,
can't be.
Can I interject really quick? We can do some clarifying questions, but we should do a public hearing before we get into comments. Are you okay with that? It's all right. Let's do it that way. So, any clarifying questions anybody has for James or the applicant? One question I have is that in the site plan I saw like a concrete platform, it looked like, for the one parking space. Is that in the northeast corner?
Northeast corner, yeah. So I created that during the construction of the house, reconstruction of the house. So we dismantled some of the tiered step down gradient on that side so that we could, I should correct what I said earlier, we can bring a vehicle down there, but it's a very tight fit. I don't think I can bring a vehicle plus a trailer. I don't think I'd be able to sort of negotiate that turn. But yes, it's a steep ramp, and so we can bring a vehicle down, but not a crane.
Any other questions before? You can ask more questions later, but want to definitely get the public hearing. All right, let's open up the public hearing. Do we have anybody in the audience? I don't think so, based on who I see. Do we have anybody online, Pam?
Let's take a quick look.
No, we don't have anybody online.
Nobody in attendees.
Yeah, I think everybody's disappeared. So I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and comments or additional questions.
James, can you address that, the short term? Can they short term it?
They can short-term one of the two residences, and the ADU requirement, our standard deed restriction requires that one of the two units be a resident occupied unit.
And do we have any code about the parking situation for short-term rental? Because that's really where I was going with that
Yeah.
concern, is that if it were to be short-term rental with no parking, then you're gonna have somebody that's not familiar with the area, doesn't know where to park. I mean, at least with a long-term renter, there's probably some institutional knowledge, I guess, that wouldn't exist if you had a short-term rental.
Well, my recollection is we don't actually have parking requirements for short-term rentals. But I can verify that before the hearing's over.
I took a pass through and I didn't see any today either. So I was curious about that also. I mean, it's, so what, I guess, what is the intent with the ADU as far as the duration of the rental and the minimum duration? I'm assuming you're gonna be running the ADU and the other one's gonna be the residence.
Quite honestly, I can't justify the expense of rebuilding it without renting it out. I think if you do some quick maths using local price per square foot of projects in the area, I'll be lucky to do this for less than 600,000. And so if you put some interest rates on that, and I rent it out as a long-term rental, it will be a charitable donation to the community by me in hundreds of thousands a year. So if construction costs come down, then it would be much easier and much better easier for me and better for the community if it could be a long-term rental. But I just can't afford to do the work and save that cabin without maximizing whatever revenue is possible on that house while living in the other. And that's me being very candid.
And have you consulted with a historic preservationist about what kinds of grants are available through state programs and so on and so forth at all?
No. Do you know of any that I should
I don't know
speak
any
to?
off the top of my head, but I know that there is money out there, which might be worth looking into to see
Definitely.
if there's something there. The other thing I was gonna say is, you're in Eagle County, correct?
Yes.
So the Eagle County Housing Authority has a program called Aid for ADUs, which grants money for building or redeveloping ADUs if they're deed restricted. So that's another thing you could look into.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll look into both of those. Thank you.
I mean, we're thrilled at the idea of keeping the cabin and keeping it historic. That part, I don't think you'll get any pushback on it from anyone. Like, that's a lovely idea, and we appreciate your thoughts on that.
I appreciate the encouragement. I think it's a charming building that can complement the main house that we've managed to hopefully keep the same character of with the renovation. So it's good for the town, I think, in the aesthetics. So I just need to make it financially add up. So.
James, the way that the historic preservation incentives works, I know it reduces some of the requirements, but as far as parking goes, kind of the baseline that we start with is one space per dwelling unit, is that correct?
No, with the historic incentives, the council can reduce or waive the parking requirements for the most part. So on a historic property, the main requirements are the same parking requirements that you would have anywhere else in town for residential. But then they're automatically reduced by 30%, and then the council has the ability to further waive them if.
Because I was reading, it was basically like 30% of the parking space requirements, and provided that each residential unit shall have at least one designated space.
Yeah, and then there's the ability.
And then we have the ability to reduce that further, but
Yeah.
that's kind of where you start, is what I was,
Yep.
is one space. I just want to make sure. Page on that.
The one item that staff could offer up, that there isn't a requirement for short-term rental parking requirements. I just looked through the code section. There could be a provision added that is similar to the provision related to leases, to identify for the person leasing the unit that there isn't an off-street parking space. There similarly could be a requirement that if the unit was being short-term rented, that it be identified in the documents provided to the short-term renter that there's no off-street parking space and you have to park on street in these areas.
That's in the conditions now, right, basically?
It's not, but you could add it. There's a
Add it,
requirement
okay.
currently about leases that would identify in the lease.
I see. So short-term rental, you're saying you'd add that?
Yeah, you could add
Okay,
that
yeah, we
in a similar
definitely
fashion.
would want to do that as well, I think. What about like the shadows and the ice? I know that you have the rail up there to stop it. Is there any change in the elevations that would add more shadows? Can we tell that yet or anything? As far as...
No, there's no change. The exterior of the building is going to essentially, or the roof line will remain the same, other than the strange creation on the from the 90s on the south end. It is fortunately hidden by the tree, that huge juniper on the top of the steps there. So, because of the way it jogs, the runoff from that is on within the property, and there's a triangle of land there anyway that it probably does soak away naturally. The part with the door and there's a window either side of the door, those, as you know, are right there on the alley, and they shed the snow and ice straight onto the walkway, which is a proper pain. And every year, while it creates havoc for everybody on the lane, it rots the boards at the bottom of the structure. So it's all around a problem. And that's so the solution there is just to do what we did on the main house, and using what wasn't there before, gutter, I putting in blocking, it's a framing thing when we redid inside the house. So we do that so we can put in a snow fence or a little bar.
Yep.
And it's a very small change, but it seems to have been effective. The guys, when they've been passing the house, have told me it's working so much better. And I think James spoke to them as well and got feedback.
Yes, we did check in with Public Works, and there has been a significant improvement. Used to have huge ice chunks falling off the side. Yeah, it's not good.
I mean, I had it on the other side of the house, and it broke something. So I had to augment the. That was before the snow fence went up. That's right. So, but the heat tape helps as well. I don't like heating things for no reason, but whenever there's a storm, that goes on. And so we just do the same on that structure as well. And so I think we can tidy up that end of the lane.
How does the shoveling work on Luxinger?
We clear it.
We clear it down to us? Yeah. It's not like mine.
Correct.
Yeah, they're there every time it snows. And often salting or gritting before. It's very thorough.
We do like those stairs, but we don't do the part in between art base and.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of part of the, yeah.
Yeah.
I see.
It's snow melted down at the bottom by Art Base.
Okay.
It's one of the few sidewalks.
So, I didn't know that sidewalk had, okay. I never noticed snow there, so that makes sense. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Do you have a motion?
Mayor, I move that the town council approve ordinance number 2, series of 2024 on first reading and continue and set the public hearing and second reading for February 27th, 2024.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. This is an,
Discussion on the motion?
yes, go for it. What do you got?
I would ask that before you come back for second reading, that you look into the possibility of some of these other grants as an opportunity to offset your cost and thus deed restricting to a local resident. And the Eagle County one I was just reading is 100% AMI, but it looks like you've got a 3-bedroom here. So I don't actually know what that is. Do you, James, off the top of your head?
Well, it'd be a 3-person, so it's in the realm of 130,000, I think, is the maximum income. And then, so you're asking what the rent would be?
What the rent would be. Like, I only know what a 2-bedroom is because that's what I live in.
Sure.
If you don't know off the top of your head, don't worry about it. But.
No, I think it'd be in the 2,500 per month.
No, it's got to be more than that because I pay more than that. And I'm in a 2-bedroom, 100%.
Well, I can look it up. for a
Yeah.
second.
Anyways, I would just ask that you look into that. I think you would probably prefer to have one person that you know there rather than a slew of different people coming and going anyway, I'm guessing, so.
Oh, naturally. I mean, I would be sharing the experience much more than anybody else.
Yeah.
So I would definitely prefer that. I am, yeah, hopefully whatever grants are available and the rental income would mean that the end result would be that the money I borrow to do the project, that would cover the interest on that and enable me to pay some of it back. So far in my calculations, it's looking really tight. So that's my biggest challenge, bigger than any other challenge. So your suggestions are appreciated.
You intend for the Eagle County program too, you mentioned, in addition to the grants, or is that separate?
That is one of the grants.
That is
yeah.
one of the grants, the Eagle
Yeah.
County, okay.
And then the other one would be like looking into the historic preservation
Right.
side of things, see if there's something there.
Right.
Angela, are you willing to amend your amendment?
Yes.
For that?
Yes.
And Dieter,
Yep.
second?
Still second.
Okay. We good with, I just
We're
did? Okay. So, I think that's a roll call vote since it's an ordinance, so Pam, would you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Let me find my sheet. Okay. Let's start with David Knight.
Yes.
Angela Anderson.
Yes.
Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
We are down to 4. Thank you.
Bare
Motion
minimum.
carries 4-0.
Thanks, Pam. And thanks, Rolf.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Likewise. All right. Last item is item 7D, public hearing and second reading ordinance number 1, series of 2024. An ordinance authorizing the sale of landscaped right-of-way, vacation of right-of-way, minor subdivision approval and rezoning to permit the sale of landscaped right-of-way area adjacent to the 1 Willits Place row homes on Lewis Lane to the 1 Willits Place row homes HOA, Basalt, Colorado. So Some long ones. James, this is you. There's a lot of long
Yeah.
agenda items tonight.
So this is public hearing and second reading of an ordinance that would permit the sale of landscape right-of-way to the Willets Row Homes HOA, which was in front of the Willets Row Homes at 210 through 270 Lewis Lane in the Willets Town Center. The request includes vacation of the right-of-way, minor subdivision to incorporate the vacated right-of-way into the applicant's property as private open space, and then rezoning of that area to the same zoning that the Willets Row Homes have in Willets Town Center. And pursuant to the town code and the Willets Town Center PUD, all of the actions require approval of a one-step review by the council without a recommendation from P&Z. And as was discussed at first reading, the background is that the applicants would like to purchase this area in front of the Willets Row Homes that's landscaped for $5,500. That is in the recent appraisal that was in the packet at the last meeting, and then incorporated into their property as private open space for them to maintain and fence off. The applicants have indicated that this area looks like their property and looks like private property and acts as their front yards. So they would like to maintain it to the level of preference that they have. The Public Works Department and Police Department were consulted on this request. They were both supportive of the applicants being able to take that space so that they could maintain it to their level of preference. And Police Department was supportive as it would reduce potential conflicts with trespassing. So council approved the ordinance on first reading at the last meeting, and there have been no substantive changes to the ordinance. So this evening, staff would recommend taking public comments and providing council discussion. And if you're comfortable, you could approve the ordinance on second reading.
All right, and I know the applicants aren't here. I appreciate them sending the letter, letting us know. So let's go ahead and open the public hearing. I don't think there's anybody.
No one hanging on?
No one's hanging on, all right. So I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and questions and comments from council. Do we know what kind of fence they're gonna do as far as like solid, split rail? What are they?
Yeah, what they've talked about with staff is the potential to do kind of a wrought iron fence that would be open for the most part, but would not allow for pets to get through.
So effective but tasteful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
No
Mayor-
concertina wire.
Yeah. Just solid,
Yeah.
something bulky.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve ordinance number 2, series, whoops, that's the wrong one. Hold on. Mayor, I move that the town council adopt ordinance number 1, series of 2024 on second reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Pam, would you please call the roll?
Absolutely. All right, let's begin with Elise Huddle.
Yes.
Angela Anderson. Yes. David Knight.
Yes.
Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
All right, I think that's it. Go ahead and adjourn. We're adjourned.
Don't you want to use the gavel?
All right.
Pam, I can't believe you were so off on your time.
Yeah, right.